Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah. Today we have a very special guest, a very good friend of mine. He's like a brother to me. We lived many years together in Jordan, had many experiences there. And please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Abdullah. Thank you, brother, for the nice introduction. So my name is Salah Al Din Falioun. I'm from Syria, from Damascus. They call it the city of Jasmine. I have a bachelor in software engineering, diploma in political science, and master's in peace and conflict studies. I have lived across many countries in the Middle East, in also East Asia and Europe. And also I have experience in activism for humanitarian and political reasons. Additionally, also an experience in humanitarian organizations and management.
Okay, thank you very much. So the reason for this interview is to kind of go over some questions and about life in Syria before the war and whatnot. There's a lot of conspiracies and a lot of things that are not clear for people who are living outside of Syria. So I thought, what better way than to speak to my friend and my brother, Salah Ad-Din. And so the first question that I have for you is, how was life before the war in Syria?
Well, basically, I mean, like Syria and maybe that region in general, like didn't have a kind of sigh of relief throughout the years. Like we had the fall of the Ottoman Empire, and then comes the kind of like the mandate or the colonization, basically, of Britain and France. And then they started to kind of segregate the countries, and then breaking them into kind of like regions of power and control. People had to struggle for their independence, and then when they got the independence, they got it in the shape of a nation state that we know of our modern time. Then I mean, there was like a shortly lived post-independence era. It was quickly changing and shifting with the influence of the Cold War. And therefore, it was influencing the governments, the consecutive governments in Syria, and causing a lot of like coup d'etat. Generals who were, let's say, fans or supported by certain powers would topple the others, and vice versa. We had like even like a fun thing, a fun fact. They call it, I think, the 48 hours government. Because basically to topple the former government, it was pretty easy. You kind of conquer two main buildings. It's called the, let's say, the command of the army, the Ministry of Defense, or the command of army, قيادة الأركان, and then also the headquarters of national radio and TV, to announce that you toppled the previous government. So it was a kind of like a period of time that was really highlighted and kind of can be described as very, very unstable. Then at the same time, the Nasser was taking power and on the rise in Egypt. So like some people started to have tendencies for uniting the Arab nations and kind of like having a collective approach. And there was an internal debate in Syria, and eventually some of the people who were fans of Nasser and also wanted to unite the Arabs and undergo this experience of unification, they basically went for it. But unfortunately that backfired. Meanwhile, there were some kind of like generals, among them was Hafiz Al Assad, who were really like kind of little by little growing their influence and trying to kind of seize power in the background, with all of these tribulations going on. And right after this kind of failure of reunification or the unity between Egypt and Syria, there was a very shortly lived period of time of, I think, maybe less than 2 years between 1961 or 2 until 1963. 1963 comes the coup d'etat of Al-Ba'ath. That coup d'etat didn't bring Hafiz al-Assad immediately, but he was one of the main people behind the scene, as also like a military officer. Little by little, he started to kind of push away and, let's say, kind of betray his friends until he got more or less absolute power. The gift he gave was basically letting go with Golan Heights for no fight in 1967. And then later, from being the Minister of Defense that time, like without being kind of like, let's say, removed from power, he gained more power and became the president later of Syria. And all of the sudden, people started to feel that, like, you know, the nightmare of the Ba'athist secular totalitarian regime is becoming a reality. So a backlash started in all over Syria, but it was spearheaded by the Muslim Brotherhood. And like they had attempts to do both, let's say, civil peaceful movements and also like some military opposition as well. And there were also some military operations. One of them was an attempt to assassinate Hafiz al-Assad himself. That, you know, kind of alarmed and kind of made Hafiz al-Assad be very brutal about how to react. Unfortunately, in the 1982, there was a massacre in Hama that marked the end of, let's say, the Muslim Brotherhood activism during that time. That massacre, you know, it wasn't covered well by media, but reports say that casualties might amount up to 40,000 people. And as a result of that, the generation of my father and my mother, and also like the generation of many of the parents of the 90s, you know, the people that were born in the 60s and then lived their youth years in the 80s, they were terrorized because basically the military grip on all of Syria was very tightened. There was even Rafat al-Assad sending troops and soldiers to remove the hijabs from the, you know, from the heads of Muslim women in main cities. There was the massacre also of Tadmor prison. So I mean, like it was kind of like a period of really terror and fear. People were basically hiding any kind of I wouldn't say like an Islamic activity, even like Muslim appearance. Like, you know, you couldn't even pray in public. You know, like it's a Muslim majority country, but it was that intense. Many people got imprisoned for no reason. Many people who had no ties with the Muslim Brotherhood were also either arrested or, you know, forcibly disappeared. So growing in that period of time, you know, for our parents, they grew up in a kind of context where politics and engaging actively in politics wasn't even a choice, because it means your family will lose you. And they somehow also transferred that fear into us. We had no political life. We had a very kind of, I would call it, like a life out without, I would say, like you could like, of course, like hang out, eat, do sports, go to the gym. You know, people who would like to do some, let's say, naughty things, they could do it. But like to get yourself together and have kind of like a purpose, like a sociological or social agenda or political agenda wasn't on the menu. So when we were born into this context, of course, we were raised on the basis that, you know, walls have ears. You know, we weren't allowed to speak or criticize anything related to the government. The Ba'ath is a totalitarian party, so like we have, let's say, bodies that take you from very early years of primary school up into high school and even into university, and furthermore into your professional life. And if you're not part of that kind of hierarchy, you are basically highlighted as a suspect, you know. So that was the life. Little by little, when Hafez al-Assad died in 2000, people weren't sure about what is next, because basically in constitution we had like let's say a standard for the age of the president, which was 40, and Bashar al-Assad wasn't 40 back then, but they made a change, you know, like this, to the constitution of Syria to exactly match the age of Bashar at that time, which was, I think, 36 with few months.
What a coincidence! Yeah. What a perfect coincidence.
Yeah, yeah. Can you imagine? And you know, like some people who were close to Hafez al-Assad before his death, they said like he appointed his son while he was like basically dead. So it was like kind of funny. It was kind of like passing, I don't know, a will for a property, not a state, not a nation. So anyway, that happened. People were having some good expectations. The reason why, because Bashar al-Assad, unlike his father and even older brother Basil, who had died before, Bashar came from, let's say, not like from a civilian background, let's say, not from a military background. And he portrayed himself as the civilized, westernized person who studied in the UK, and he's a doctor, and he brought IT to Syria. So, I mean, he was kind of like leading the youth and showing kind of like a civilized face of this brutal regime. But little after, you know, that hope, you know, started to little by little fade away. In 2000, between 2000 and 2005 or 6, there was something called like Damascus Spring, where some political activists started to have conversations about politics openly in some salons. But soon after, you know, Bashar al-Assad, they mentioned that he was advised by his security councils that you should stop this, or otherwise your regime will be over. And so he kind of canceled all of these activities. Little by little, inflation started to escalate. More privatization started to be witnessed in Syria. We started to see like these kind of like main figures, like business. I would say like business hegemony for some companies, and for some figures that are closely connected to this regime. So there was a kind of complaint from the inflation and this kind of also privatization to people connected to Assad family in one way or another. Then the so-called Arab Spring started in 2010, starting from Tunisia, Egypt, Libya. Even up until then, Bashar al-Assad was feeling that he's safe, that this won't come to threaten his throne. He was interviewed in the end of 2010 and beginning of 2011, and he was asked specifically about whether he feels that the snowball of the so-called Arab Spring or the revolutions would be also one day in Syria, and he confidently said no, because people of Syria love me, and I don't adopt the same policies that the other leaders are adopting in the region, which was relatively correct, because really people still had hope in him, and still, you know, compared to his father, had more, let's say, opportunity to have a sustainable governance.
Okay, so you could say that the government before was very similar to other, for example, to communist governments like North Korea or even Romania under Ceausescu. Would that be an accurate representation? So there was a lot of fear mongering, a lot of, a lot of secrecy, being careful from what you say.
Definitely, because basically, like you need to look into how the Syrian intelligence and military developed, and to which bodies they got their ties. And it's a fact that first, the Syrian military is more Soviet leaning, so having ties with like communist, socialist movements and military, let's say, institutions. Also, like we I'm not sure if it's a good thing to mention, but basically during the Nasri era, there was this kind of security intelligence person. His name, I think, is Abdelhamid Sarraj, who invented ways of torture that were unprecedented, and they were applied in both Syria and Egypt, because it was the united Arab state back then, with the two, let's say, federations or provinces. So, I mean, we have this close Soviet Union ties. We had also the connections with East Germany as well. So East Germany, and of course, it was part of, let's say,
the Soviet Union.
Yes, the Soviet Union, and also like the Eastern division during the Cold War. So, and they kind of transferred all of the, let's say, knowledge, the methods of interrogation, of investigation, of also being suspicious of everyone, and even ways of extreme torture. We have a way of torture that is called the German chair.
What is that?
I think they bring kind of like, let's say, an iron chair, and they flip it upside down, and then like they hold the body of the, I'm not quite sure, but I'm trying to explain as much as possible, that they hold the body of the detainee against that iron chair and start to stretch the body against the iron, so that the muscles, the bones, the joints start to kind of like little by little tear and cause significant pain. You know,
Yeah,
it's kind
that's
of like
crazy.
they would scramble you into the, let's say, the legs of the chair, and kind of also press you and stretch you against it.
Yeah, that's very very wild what you're saying. I remember when I was living in Jordan, in the early days of the war, we were getting so many pictures and videos about all these torture methods, people getting tortured and people being forced to say that Bashar is their god. And we were getting a lot of really crazy violent videos coming out of Syria. So my next question then would be, what were your first reactions during the early days of the war? How did you feel during that time?
So yeah, like I mean, connecting the dots, we were just speaking about how, like what, like we had many of the youth, we had like significant, let's say, like we had a very increasing follow of the news because of what is happening in other countries. Many people were really anticipating something, but like nothing serious was taking place uh, at the beginning, let's say, of 2011. My own experience, my personal experience, basically, that I told you I was raised, and many others of my generation, with this kind of, let's say, culture of fear and mistrust as well. Like you cannot even trust a family member on saying anything. You are not allowed to discuss things related to religion, to politics, to kind of question the status quo. You know.
Yeah.
So, but I would say, um, maybe like blessed, or I don't know, like God put things in my way, and persons as well, in a way that I learned the hard way. It was informal education through like different sources, about the reality of this regime and the background of it. Like, of course, my family wouldn't come and tell me, like, listen, in the 80s, this and that happened, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had to find out by myself. The internet helped a little bit. There were some newly established TV satellite stations, channels, sorry, where they were kind of opposition leaning, and they were kind of like holding some debates and kind of informing the population about the horrifying things that the Assad regime had done in the past. However, they didn't have like a clear program. They were just like kind of highlighting the like, I mean, they were, let's say, very powerful and influential figures, but they didn't come out as a unified body of opposition, or that they have a kind of an agenda or political program to replace Assad. But that kind of also brought some, some knowledge, and also some elders in the family that were very, very helpful and educational to speak with them. Additionally, also, I got to learn a very interesting thing. It was kind of perplexing for me, being a teenager at that time, that the Assad regime, that was portraying itself as a kind of big support of the Palestinian cause, have committed many massacres to the Palestinian population, especially in Lebanon. Talking about Mazar Tel Zatar. So that was like kind of, perplexing, like what is happening. The official and public image is that we are pro-Palestine, but at the same time, we kill them elsewhere. So
That's crazy. Yeah. I know, even living in Jordan, that the government always used to kind of portray itself to be a protector of minorities and a protector of Palestinians and Palestine. And then when the actual civil war ended and the new regime took power, we found out that so many people were in prison who were Palestinian and specific, even from other minorities and even from the Alawi group themselves. So it was a huge shocker, and we even found out some people from our family were in Sidnaya prison that we didn't even know existed. So these people were just there for so many years, locked away underground. That's really crazy. My next question for you is: did you witness any oppression from the former government yourself?
So yeah, like I mean, the early days of revolution. It started like in March of 2011. There was this infamous story about the kids in Daraa who basically kind of like sprayed graffiti on the walls in light of the, let's say, the series of like revolutions in Arab countries. And they said, they like wrote on the graffiti, "Ijak ad-dor ya doctor," which means your turn is up, doctor. And that also, let's say, let this regime fall and freedom, As a result, that happened in February in Daraa. And these kids were arrested, and they were handled by one of the security branches, political security branch or something. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine, like, kids were just like playing with graffitis. So as a result, there was kind of a tension between the families of these kids in Daraa and the government. Meanwhile, also in Damascus, there was an event in February that some people demonstrated against a brutal reaction of one of the police people against a person in Hariqa market. It's one of the old souks in Damascus. And there was a gathering. They said, because this policeman was very rude and kind of like humiliated another person. So those people that gathered, they said, Syrian people won't be humiliated. Immediately, the Minister of Interior rushed to the place, and he told the people in a recorded video that, well, if you keep doing this, I will count this as a protest. And people, some intelligence members were kind of camouflaged as civilians as well, and they started to shush people down. No, we don't want a protest. It's not against anybody. And then, that episode had finished. But like people started to get encouraged, to kind of do something. There was an invitation for Day of Anger, but it didn't work out. There was kind of a candlelight vigil next to the Libyan embassy. So some people were hoping peace and sending solidarity messages to the Libyan people. I remember seeing the new Libyan flag on the embassy of Libya in Damascus. So that was a scene for me. So people kind of started to, for different reasons, to engage on this. So first protest was 15th of March 2011 from Hamidiyya Souk. It's very central to Damascus. It's next to the citadel of Damascus. And people started to march. They had clear demands for freedom, clear chants against the Assad. They were quickly arrested, brutally beaten, and humiliated in front of many. Meanwhile, the attempts of and the demands of people of Daraa to kind of ask for their kids to be back were met with absolute irresponsibility and humiliation. Because one of the cousins of Assad was leading a security branch in Daraa, and he very harshly responded to them. He said, you won't have your kids back. I mean, this is the narrative. You won't have your kids back, and if you'd like, we can send you somebody to teach you how to make new kids or something like that.
Wow.
So people didn't like, people of Daraa were mostly kind of part of the government, part of the Ba'ath party. They were mostly supportive, but under this stress and under this humiliation, they could not hold it back, of course, because this is, you know,
understandably.
Yeah. So in March, on March 18th, it was a Friday. There were two kind of, let's say, protests happening simultaneously in two different places. One in Damascus in Umayyad Mosque, to continue with what started 3 days before, and one in Daraa, which was related to what happened with the story of the kids. The protest of Daraa was met with extreme violence. So they were basically shooting live on people, and they killed people on that day. And you know, it was kind of like unprecedented, very intense, very kind of terrifying to watch. That your army, your military, your the security forces that are supposedly in a kind of I don't know, in a kind of normal state will protect you, is kind of shooting at you. And little by little, people started to demonstrate even more, and, you know, kind of like demand first to cut this violence, and also to not allow let's say, the end game of Hama to happen in Daraa, because basically the regime started to besiege Daraa. Can you imagine, like, your military is kind of moving and mobilizing to seize not like the city of an enemy, like of its own people. So therefore the protests started to spread over, and to spill over to other cities in Syria. My experience personally was in kind of, I was watching all of these events, but because I wasn't immediately like part of the activist groups, I was anticipating protests in kind of some, I would call them landmarks, where protests kind of frequently occur. So soon after, I was expecting one of the protests to occur next to a square. It was a Friday as well. And Friday is important because people have the only situation where they gather at the mosque. You know, like, you cannot officially, you know, hold a protest or ask for permission for this. So the Friday prayer is kind of an excuse also for people to get together and to go in large numbers, relatively large numbers, from one place. So I was expecting that. I went in a lonely trip to just like observe, because basically the regime started to, especially the public channels of the regimes, they started to say, oh, like, this is Qatar-sponsored propaganda and Saudi-sponsored propaganda. Nothing is happening in Syria. So I wanted to figure out for myself. I went there and I saw how the, let's say, the security forces disguised as civilians holding pictures of Bashar Al Assad marching toward the peaceful protesters, and at some point they turned into absolute animals. They started to hold each one of the peaceful protesters, you know, kind of like a swing, and then beat the hell out of them. Like, you know, like 3-4 people will hold just one person, and 2-3 others will just like hit him indiscriminately in in every piece and part, even sensitive parts of the body and the face. It was, like very brutal to see that. A few minutes after they started themselves, those disguised people, they started to crush and break the glasses and the properties of people of that neighborhood. And later, the official news report of the regime said, look, these are the peaceful civilian protesters. Look what they did to the properties of the people. So from that moment on, I decided that I need to take an action, although it wasn't backed or supported by close people and relatives, of course, due to their fear and due to what they witnessed, basically, of brutality in previous years.
Yes, so
I saw much more than this, but that was the beginning. I saw people being killed in peaceful demonstrations, people being arrested. I was myself, subject to detention several times. Some of our beloved ones and dear friends got tortured until death. Some of them, we don't even know whether they are still alive or not. I mean, some people held their hope until the opening of the prisons in Syria following the Battle of Rad al-Adwan. But unfortunately, as we proceed with time, all of these hopes are fading away.
May Allah have mercy on those friends or family that you lost. We saw so many horrifying images out of the prisons after the new regime took over, including some journalists and some smaller politicians who were invited back to Syria to be forgiven, but were actually found there to be brutally tortured to death. So that's a very unfortunate thing. So how did the government treat people during the war? Were they suspicious of everyone?
Definitely, and they had kind of categories also of people. So the worst. I mean, they would treat maybe those people with the worst treatment and the worst torture, and probably which would lead to death, are those who are providing medical support and medical aids and equipment to support their fellow Syrians in other governorates and other cities, and providing maybe like some food and shelter and humanitarian aid. Those were marked the worst. Can you imagine? While second maybe category, I mean, I cannot generalize. Of course, there are victims and casualties from all of these categories. But I mean, just like to try to get an idea of this mentality, this kind of very sadistic mentality. So second category would be maybe like the peaceful demonstrators. And third would be the people who kind of like, let's say, held arms against the regime. I mean, you had a chance as a peaceful maybe activist to also kind of being let go after some time. Yeah. For people with kind of who picked up arms later against the regime, they were also kind of, many of them like tortured to death or something, or even kind of brutally killed in detention. But at the same time, there was some treatment for some of them to kind of, let's say, settle their dispute with the government and kind of, what do you call it, normalize. I would say it like neutralize or normalize their, let's say defection or opposition with the government. There was a reconciliation process for some of those people. So I mean, it's very, very brutal. And of course, the detention wasn't limited to men, women, elders, kids even.
Wow.
You know, there's still a family of a female doctor with all of her kids. She was a champion of chess in Syria. And she was like very prominent person. Unfortunately, we know nothing about her and her kids as well.
That's ridiculous. That's crazy. So in terms of prison brutality, do you have any personal accounts of people that you knew who that were able to come out of prison? Can you tell us some of their experiences?
Well, like I'm one of those. Like unfortunately, I got detained twice. Once in 2011, and the second one was in 2012. The first one was merely for, let's say, putting and publishing some flyers that were kind of obviously against Assad. But the response of the security forces back then was that they started shooting that night. Like, can you imagine you're just like distributing some, flyers and kind of like, let's say, brochures and stuff. And then the response was like, shooting, trying to shoot at you, basically. Luckily, like it wasn't directed at us, but they shoot it that night. So, and knowing that it was directly, criticizing Assad, like me and the other person that was detained, like we were really fearing for our lives. And they treated me very, very badly, and they tortured me very, very badly, very brutally, because it was a flyer that says this is the kind of the paper that you print when somebody dies, and you say like those are the relatives of this family member, and then if you wanna, so we were mocking Bashar Al Assad and saying, okay, now like he's going to hellfire instead of ila rahmatihi ta'ala. And knowing that, their response was as if, astaghfirullah, somebody is, mocking God, astaghfirullah. They like they're like Bashar al-Assad to them is like kind of immortal or something. So you cannot say that as Assad might die or will die.
Yeah.
And so the response was very brutal. I was kind of more tortured and way more brutally treated than even those
deserted the army.
Deserted the army, yes. So in 11 days, I lost 6 kilos. I wasn't expecting to kind of go out in one piece, or even to go out alive. But alhamdulillah, like, I mean, there were some circumstances. There was kind of an Arab commission sent by the Arab League back then, and they pressured the regime into kind of releasing some peaceful prisoners or detainees, just like to show some kind of like good intentions and good, let's say, behavior. And under extreme pressure, kind of they made a list of few tens of people, and I was among them.
Wow.
Next time it was much more, let's say.
So that was the first time. Now it's the second time you were imprisoned.
Yeah, the second time was much longer. It was for 7 months.
Wow.
And it started from 2012 in October. And the funny thing that the name of the branch is called the Branch of Palestine, or Palestine Branch. And the regime that, again, claims to be in the resistance axis and that support primarily the Palestinian cause, was holding and torturing so many fellow Palestinians in the Palestinian branch, you know, the branch of Palestine. It was one of the, I mean, like, and to name, like, to use the name of Palestine to such a very, like, doomed place, a place of torture, a place of death, a place of savage treatment. I mean, it's also kind of showcases this double-faced nature of this regime.
Yeah. So those are some really horrific experiences that you had to endure while in Syria. And my next question for you then, you know, being in this type of violent situation and context, what was your first reaction when you learned of the new advance of the revolutionaries in 2024? What were your first feelings?
So, like, I mean, fast forward also from, let's say, 2013 up until, you know, I mean, like 2000, I would say beginning of 2012 up until maybe like 2013, there was like some significant advancement of the Free Syrian Army and also like other militias and fractions. And at some point, they seized even 70% of the land in Syria. Wow. But Iran started to get involved and to send, you know, like also there were militias backed up by Iran and its axis. Exactly, Hezbollah and many other also sectarian militias coming from Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan as well. Wow. You know, like we had like tens of militias, like I mean, and from almost every let's say country around us. So we had all of these people getting involved. Nonetheless, it didn't stop the, let's say, like at some point also the, let's say, the Free Syrian Army and the other Islamic and let's say other local militias as well, they managed to fight back and to kind of balance the influence of Iran-backed militias. But the big change, let's say, into the battlefield, it was basically when Russia entered in 2015, because it kind of provided kind of, let's say, like fly hegemony, yes, and kind of airstrike power that was also targeting civilians and kind of like, let's say, rebel strongholds brutally and indiscriminately. So that was the kind of the big change. And they also, the officials state, the Russian officials stated that they tried at least 300 new weapons in Syria that later was used in Ukraine, basically, by the way. Nonetheless, that was like kind of like a big game changer. And many pockets, let's say, of the rebel areas started little by little to be evacuated to the north. And then at some point we were just left with some small areas of control, like in Idlib and in other northern areas with Turkish-backed militias as well. 2024 was one of the worst years during the years of the revolution, because basically many regional and international states started to normalize with Assad.
Yeah.
And I believe 8 European countries also had started to initiate efforts to basically to normalize with Assad, and to kind of to discuss even the sending refugees back, and having kind of like aspirations to plan this ahead. And some countries even sent their tried to reopen their embassies. So it was very bad from that perspective. Militarily, also, like we saw like all of the, like, I mean, the back in like in the early years, and even up until maybe 2018, maybe also 2020, 22, like there was some shift in the control map.
Mm-hmm.
But in the last few years, there was almost nothing going on. Additionally, also the earthquake happened in northwest Syria and southern Turkey. That was also a humanitarian catastrophe. So, like, I mean, we were having so many things, happening.
And ISIS, and ISIS.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
Of course, that also kind of worsened the situation to start with.
Mm-hmm.
Nonetheless, I mean, like 2024, and I mean, like when let's say when the deterrence of violation started, Rad al-Adwan, this operation, and the aim was Aleppo. Many Syrians were very afraid that Aleppo, one of the largest cities and considered also like economic capital of Syria, to witness the same, let's say, situation that happened before, because basically like different fractions of oppositions and Free Syrian Army and also Islamic militias, they have taken Aleppo from before, and they lost it. They lost it very brutally also, with so much destruction.
Mm-hmm.
So retaking Aleppo was not very, like, let's say, perceived as, this is a victory and period. No, it was, okay, victory temporarily maybe, but we were very fearful of what will happen next.
Mm-hmm.
And then later, when, the troops started to mobilize and move towards Hama, southward, we expected that they will stop at, they are called like the escalation zones, established in a kind of an agreement, kind of sponsored by Turkey, Russia, and Iran. So we thought that they will reach that limit and then stop, But when they advanced and took Hama, the city, and people were very cheerful of them, and it was kind of something maybe unprecedented to take the city of Hama. This is the first time from the 80s, So people like had very extreme joy of that moment. We started to think of the next step. This next step, there was always this, I would call it, the regime and the strategist of the Assad regime, they call it the meaningful Syria, is basically to have a mini Syria that spans over the coastal cities, connecting Homs with Damascus and the south, and that's it. So we were also afraid that, Homs will be excluded and the coastal cities will be excluded, and Assad will remain in power, ruling over these, I would call it this corridor of cities. But then they advanced into Homs as well. And Homs also had its fears because it's a multi-sectarian, let's say, city, which witnessed also brutal events back in the days. And they call it the capital of the revolution because many victims were lost in Homs from the very early days. So troops were advancing into Homs. At the same time, some troops started also to mobilize from the south into Damascus. And I think there was this moment where those who took Homs successfully, alhamdulillah, went toward Damascus, while also the people from the south also kind of moving into Damascus, that they met in Damascus, and of course Assad ran away. It was sleepless nights for most of the Syrians all over the world, not only inside of Syria, also in the diaspora. And we were witnessing a dream that, I don't know, like even maybe a modern time miracle, we would call it.
Yeah, in just 11 days, you know, we saw so much change in Syria. I remember I was working in my old job, my electrical job, and you know, we were all watching each city like get liberated city by city, and I was so happy. And when I heard that they took Damascus, I went outside and had some you know, tears of joy, and I made sajda shukr yani to Allah Azza wa Jal. And it was almost as if my own country had been liberated, you know, because I've seen, and I have so many Syrian friends, and we've seen the violence and the horrors that came out of Syria. So I have, my next question for you is, if you have a message for Bashar and his allies, what would you say real quick?
I mean, like quickly, I would say that, you know, like there's a saying, I think Arabic is very poetic. So maybe like we would use Arabic and then maybe help each other into translating this. There's a kind of a quote that says ما طار طير وارتفع إلا كما طار وقع. There's no bird that
flies except that
flies.
The way that it flies, it also can fall.
Exactly. And for some people, they acted as it's a given that they will stay in power, that they will, like, I mean, all of these kind of, not only Bashar Al Assad, but so many tyrants over history, even also like modern history, they act as if they are immortal, as if they're kind of will get away with whatever they do. And some of them maybe did already in this, you know, earthly life, but definitely won't later. But it is very, very satisfying to see some of that, like let's say a grain of what could happen to those in this life. Bashar Al Assad was kind of like I would say like a psychopathic, let's say psychopathic personality, and it was great to see this kind of arrogance and this kind of holding to power collapsing at altogether in a kind of like in a moment.
It's a short time.
Exactly. The message to him is, hopefully we will get you in this life before the afterlife, and hopefully we'll bring you to court and give you the proper let's say judgment that you deserve it in this life before the afterlife.
I mean, inshallah. So, you know, knowing that the new regime had taken over, how do you view the current state of Syria after the end of the former regime? You know, like, can you compare, like, you know, regimes between, do you see any violence of the oppression in the previous regime, the new one?
So basically, we need to understand that it's a very complex situation. And let's say I'll call it the government or the newly formed military is not just one fraction. It's a group of let's say militias and fractions and military bodies, and they come from, let's say, from harsh military and security background over the years that were kind of, let's say, undergoing very extreme conditions all over the country. So I managed to, let's say, visit my country in December of 2024, right before it finished. People were very, very extremely happy. The country is completely devastated. It's like living in a country, I don't know, like, I mean, it's very sad to say that about, like any country, but it was a very devastated country, the infrastructure very bad, electricity kind of cuts, shortages most of the time, the water, the pollution, even the mines that might blow up anytime. Like, I mean, it was kind of really like a country broken into pieces. Despite that, people were for the first time having a sigh of relief and kind of cheerful from inside and having hope. And that was the fight actually in Syria for hope, because at some point 2024 was kind of marking the end of that hope, but alhamdulillah, something else happened. So people were very cheerful, were kind of like, let's say, appreciative very much of the efforts and the troops and the leadership that liberated them. But at the same time, also they had their own doubts and their own fears because of the, let's say, both some factual aspects and also some rumors that were spreading about some of the forces or some of the, let's say, powers that moved into Damascus and other cities. So kind of like a mixed feelings, but cheer is triumphing, of course.
Yeah. So my next question would be like, you brought up the idea of the people having mixed feelings. So, here in the United States, when the liberation started to happen again, there was a lot of conspiracy theories going around about Abu Muhammad al-Julani, Ahmad Al Sharaa, about him being like, ISIS, he's secretly CIA, secretly Mossad, secretly, they tend to do this a lot, especially in our own countries, kind of a conspiracy of everybody being secretly something else. What was your perception of Ahmad Al Sharaa himself?
Like, honestly speaking, we need to kind of revisit history for a moment, because what happened basically in 2000, amidst the US invasion of Iraq, basically Assad regime felt the threat and therefore wanted to act immediately. And one of the, let's say, the strategies that he adopted was basically to deliberately allow controlled Islamic, I would call it propaganda, unfortunately, because it was to serve the purposes of the Syrian regime itself. So he kind of selectively chose some fake sheikh, I would call them, to go and preach in certain mosques across Syria and to invite people to go to Iraq. And ironically, there were places like bus stops in this secular totalitarian Ba'athist regime who would take possible jihadis to the borders of Iraq. It's like almost like a way paved with roses, right? So unfortunately, of course, also like the people. So there was kind of people seeing the American forces stepping on let's say, the Iraqi soil and trying to, having feelings to their fellow brothers in that country.
Yeah.
And then the regime also kind of deployed that for their own agendas. So by sending those people, they had, they had two goals. First, to kind of hinder the American progress in Iraq, and second, to serve the Americans themselves as well, because they had infiltrated into these kind of, organizations, and they can serve the American intelligence once needed through this infiltration as well. So, and Sharaa himself was part of this. Like when he was, when he took the decision maybe to go to Iraq, he was among those people who had maybe feelings of injustice, or that something was going on wrong with the invasion of Iraq, and wanted to act to this. But the situation there was something completely, different.
Yeah.
So what happened in Iraq, we know very little about what happened. We have kind of just like the, let's say,
overall story.
Yes, the overall story. Yeah. Of course, he engaged in kind of resistance, and that he was imprisoned for a period of time, and then he was kind of like a leader of a small cell, and then his responsibility grew up. And then when the situation, the revolution started in Syria, he was sent by his commanders to start an effort in Syria. And therefore, the Nusra Front, or the Nusra concept, was created. And later on, the other stages, I think, is pretty known to people. Was affiliated to IS, and then when it tried to expand into Syria as well, and to be ISIS, then he pledged allegiance to Al Qaeda, and then later he split away from Al Qaeda, and then he adopted a model that is more close to Ahrar Sham and Taliban model, by having an Islamic Emirate or Islamic State. The resonance of this, or the reasoning, was to have a kind of like an Islam governed state within the nation state.
Yeah.
And then later, with the, let's say, following the fall of Assad regime, there was kind of like this version that comes very closely to what the Free Syrian Army was calling for initially.
So we have a few minutes left, so I wanted to ask you about current affairs. We have a lot of things happening surrounding the topic of the Kurds. I read recently that the new government gave citizenship and are allowing the Kurds to practice their language and culture. So I was firstly very surprised to hear that Bashar Al Assad didn't already have these rights for Kurds, because they are a part of the society, and he's always propaganding himself as to be this kind of person for the minorities and friends of the Christians and friends of everybody. So for me, in my opinion, I feel like this is a very smart and pragmatic move, but also a way to incorporate an ethnic group who deserves to be incorporated into the Syrian state. So what is your thought about that, real quick?
Well, first, let's say, it wasn't us that decided at some point to, let's say, segregate and dissect these countries into the shapes and forms that they have today. Nevertheless, the idea, or kind of like, let's say, the division of mandate and colonization between different powers, I think was either insensitive or deliberately selective about the ethnic issues and let's say the ethnic grievances that might come up later. Because basically when, for example, France came to Syria, they tried at the beginning to divide the country into several states, to, let's say, the state of Aleppo, the state of Sueda, the state of the coast, and also of Damascus. So, I mean, trying to divide, and basically Lebanon was kind of already took the shape of Lebanon, while it was kind of, not necessarily separated into this form. So I mean, this happened, and of course communities got spread and split across borderlines, and there were also like waves of migration, because borders weren't kind of let's say well established and well protected as they are now.
Yeah.
So there were, I would say, many people from, let's say, Kurdish origins that already settled and have integrated within the different Syrian cities and also villages. Though there was kind of waves of migration that started as early as 1920, following the World War I, and they were mostly happening in the northern part of Syria. And at that time there was the French mandate, and like for I mean, at some point, many of the migrants that settled into Al Jazeera area in Syria, it's basically, let's say, the northeast area of Syria.
Mm-hmm.
So they settled in some cities, and also some, like the French, under the French mandate, many were given citizenship. But I think the event, there was an event, it's called the kind of Al Jazeera, it was called the Al Jazeera Population Census in 1962. And it was more or less under kind of like the government following the independence and just before the Ba'ath took over. And then they kind of investigated some illegal, what they called like illegal infiltration of tens of thousands of Turkish Kurds into Syria. And as a result, there was more maybe than 120,000 Kurdish people stripped of their Syrian citizenship. And when the Ba'ath came into power as a nationalist, Arabist, secular movement, this oppression and this negligence continued. So the policies of Hafez Al Assad and also Bashar Al Assad were kind of in absolute, let's say, negligence, abandonment of the Kurdish rights. But they also deliberately used them politically for their agendas. So Hafez Al Assad was trying to kind of become an ally with Abdullah Öcalan to kind of, let's say, hold this card against the Turks.
Yeah.
But then he received a very strong threat from the Turks about Öcalan, and as a result, the Turks managed to kind of, separate the two allies from each other, and to arrest Öcalan. And Bashar al-Assad also followed the leads of his father by neglecting deliberately also the rights of the Kurds, but at the same time using them as a political card during the Syrian conflict. Yeah. So there was kind of like, I would say, not like a 100% like peace treaty or kind of like, let's say, agreement between SDF and the Syrian regime, but they had their own kind of backstage conversations and let's say consensus that they manage those areas in a kind of sometimes in a bilateral way. Mm-hmm. So you'd find an SDF controlled area, but there are still some regime posts and Russian troops operating in that area as well.
Yeah, because of everything that's been happening lately with the Kurds, I always like to differentiate that and specify that these PKK, YPJ, they don't, they like to show that they are main voice of the Kurds. In reality, they're a very loud minority of the Kurds, and they're generally very hostile towards Muslims and very hostile towards other ethnic groups as well, even other minorities. But the vast majority of Kurds are very, very kind people, just like every other minority that we have. So we have about just a few minutes left. So my last question for you was, in a few sentences, what is your idealistic version of Syria?
Well, to be honest, the early demands of the Syrian uprising was simply to, we were calling for justice, we were calling for accountability, for relinquishing nepotism, for also, let's say, ending corruption. Mm-hmm. We would like to see that into, let's say, contemporary Syria, like the current situation in Syria and the future Syria as well. The ideal situation, of course, would be people have peace, have prosperity, not at the cost of course, like, let's say, principles and dignity of either us or also other important matters in the region. Mm-hmm. Like to have just kind of, let's say, a moment in history to restore and develop our capacity and kind of like, let's say, create a model that will highlight our beautiful civilization and restore the historic role that Damascus and other beautiful cities in the Levant played. Yeah. That is the hope.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just to give a summary, and final thoughts that I have is like, Syria has gone through so much pain and headache, and I have so much hope for the future of Syria. And we will be watching Syria with very great interest, inshallah, for whatever positive outcomes that will come in the future. Syria has always been the biggest. It's been kind of like the Germany of the Middle East in a way, or even Bilad al-Sham, in which the people are very educated and a lot of industry, a lot of brain, a lot of civilization there. So we have a very big hopes for the future of Syria, inshallah.
Inshallah. Historically they say, and even during early times of Islam, like if you are in positioned or if your allies are people of the Levant, then they will go with you to the end of the world. Yeah. You have the best ally. Moreover, like the let's say, of course, like the impact that spread from this period of history, and also from this piece of land. I would call it maybe even a holy land. That sunshine and that sparkle, went all over the world. It's cradle of the three most important religions.
Yeah.
And therefore it has a unique value to many people around the world, to billions of people around the world. So we expect and hope for the best, and who knows, maybe like this is a start of a new chapter in the episode of of this territory.
Thank you so much, brother, for your time. I really appreciate you giving me such a good detail and personal experiences. This has been a wonderful video, and just want to let you know that anytime you would like to come back and make another video about any kind of topic you have in mind, you're always welcome to.
Thank you very much, Abdullah, and thank you for having me. And sorry, maybe we went a little bit over time. I hope it's not like a boring topic, but it means so much to me, and I believe to you as well, and to so many people who are worried and have doubts and concerns and questions maybe about the situation in Syria, especially in light of the recent events. Hopefully we will hear the best, not only about Syria, also about Palestine and people of Gaza and people all around the world who are suffering unjustly. So hopefully we see like these things becoming better, and we pray for peace.
Thank you so much for your time, brother.
Underdogs. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum.